Troubleshooting in Linux. In this video, we're going to continue to talk about troubleshooting in your Linux system. And the aim of this particular video is to familiarize you with more tools and commands that are central to troubleshooting problems. We're also going to look at some classic or common problems that people come across in Linux and walk you through troubleshooting those from beginning to end. So let's get started. We're going to start this troubleshooting video by talking about useful commands. And some of these you might have already seen before, but this will give you a chance to brush up on them and also see them in the context of troubleshooting. And we'll examine log files with some of these commands, look at some errors in log files, learn how to track them down, talk about boot problems and how to boot off of an emergency recovery disk, and then also just talk about some common or classic problems in Linux that people always run across, and how to recognize these problems and how to solve them from beginning to end. Okay, so let's move back out to the Linux screen and get started on this. The first command that I want to talk about in this useful commands for troubleshooting is the find command. Now, the find command, what it does is it finds a file on your system either by name or modification date or owner of the file, things like that. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to use the find command to look for some files in our system. Let me switch over to be the super user here so that we can actually find the files, because we have to have access permissions to the directories to be able to find files in those directories. Okay? So the most basic form of the find command is you give it a directory to start looking in. So I'm going to just say the slash directory. So I'm looking on my whole system. And this says look in the root directory and every other directory below it. So this is going to look in the whole entire system for a file. And the most basic way to use find is to use the name qualifier, minus name, and then what you do is you give the name of the file that you're looking for. Now, if you know the exact name of the file, you can type it in. You can also use wildcards like we've seen before, and you can use them here. And this would say something like, find all the files on the system that end in .local. They can start with anything, right? That's what the star says. But they have to end in .local. Okay? So if we do this and hit enter here, hopefully it doesn't scroll off the screen on me. And yeah, so there's about 10 answers here. And you know, these are all the files on the system that end in .local. Now you could narrow down your search. You could say, okay, I just want the stuff in the etc directory, and you could do it that way, and then that'll find stuff in the etc directory and below it. Okay? So that's how you can use find in sort of the most basic way. Now let's look how to use it with like modification times and user IDs, stuff like that. Let's look at the man page for find to see how we use these more advanced options. I'm going to page down here with the space bar to get down to the test section. Here we go. So there's some discussion here about numeric arguments. Let's hold off on that for a second. Instead, let's look at a class of options that we can use with find here. So we have a-min, we have a-newer, and a-time. Well, a-min and a-time both take a numeric argument. You just give a number with them. So the a here stands for access. So if I say find minus a-min 5, that's going to find the files that were accessed 5 minutes ago. All right? But when I specify that 5, just plain, I just put minus a-min 5, it's going to find files that were accessed exactly n minutes ago. See, if I specify the number plain, it's using it as an exact number. Right? But if I want to find files that were accessed, more recently than 5 minutes ago, then I can use a minus sign in front of that 5. So if I said minus a-min minus 5, that would find files that were accessed less than 5 minutes ago. And if I put a plus sign in front of that 5, that would find files that were accessed greater than 5 minutes ago. So personally, I use the plus and the minus option. That's all I ever use. I never really use this exact option. I don't, how would I know when the file was last accessed exactly? All right, but it is a way to narrow things down more. If you try it once with 5 minutes, then you try it again with 6, and try it again with 7 to see what was accessed exactly 7 minutes ago. Maybe that would be useful for you in certain circumstances. I definitely use these two way more often. So that's for file access, the a-min and the a-time. If we page down again with the space bar, another one that I use a lot is the m-min and m-time, and this has to do with a file being modified. All right, and again, the same thing holds. The n option there, we can use a plus or a minus in front of it to represent greater than or less than that number that we specify. All right, so let's quit out of here and actually do a find command. I'm going to say I'm in the home Perry directory here, so let me just do a find dot, which says start in the current working directory, home Perry, and look in all the directories below that. And I'm going to say minus m-min, and I'm going to say minus 10. See what was accessed in the last, or modified in the last 10 minutes. So I do that, and a bunch of stuff comes up here. Now, I swear to you that I have not modified any of these files, but the reason that they're all coming up as modified is some program is modifying them. All right? And you can notice they're all in the .gnome directory, which is, GNOME is my desktop environment, and the .gnome directory keeps a bunch of files for GNOME. Okay, so when GNOME needs to write something to keep track of what's going on in my desktop environment, it can write to some of these files here. If I open some window or something, some file in here gets written to keep track of that window. Okay, so all these files, even though I have not personally modified them, they all come up in the find command because they've been modified by some program. So keep this in mind. If you do this kind of a search, like on the slash directory, you're going to find all sorts of modified files, because all the log files, the spool files for the printing and the mail and stuff like that, all those files are going to be modified by some program, and you're going to get pages and pages of data that come up when you do this kind of a search on the slash directory or the slash var directory or something like that. Okay, so just keep that in mind, that for those kind of searches, you want to pipe it through more or something so that you can see all the data so it doesn't scroll off the screen. Let me show you a couple more commands that are useful for troubleshooting, and these commands are really useful for doing things like going through log files. Okay, so let's go up to the var log directory and look at some log files there. And let me show you the first command, grep. And what grep does is it looks for a string of characters or like a word in a files that you specify. So let me show you how to use it. So if I say grep network in boot.log, right, and I hit enter here, then it'll print out every line in boot.log that has the word network on it. All right. Now the word, it could be networking or networked or iNetwork or whatever, and it would still print out. In this case, it's actually just the word network appears by itself on 3 different lines, and you can see that my network was brought up successfully the last time my system booted. All right. So the point of this is that if your network didn't come up, or if your network isn't working right now, you could come up to the log directory here and grep for network in the boot log and see if it was brought up successfully. And if it was, then you can narrow down the time frame when the network went down. Okay, and maybe that'll give you some clues as to why it's not working right now. All right, so and this just saves you from having to go through the boot.log file, line by line and reading every single line in the file. Now you can also use grep on like the whole directory. I could say grep network on star. Okay, and what this would do is it would look for network in every single file in this directory. All right, so let me hit enter here. Actually, let me pipe it through more first, because there's going to be a whole bunch of them, I'm sure. And I'll pipe it through more and hit enter here. And you can see over here on the left is the name of the file that it found the word network in, and then after the colon there is the actual output from that file, that actual line of output. And if I page down here, you can see it's in bootlog 1, bootlog 2, and so on. It's in messages, messages 1, 2, 3, and it's also in this RPM packages. And if you look in there, it's like KDE network -2 whatever. Okay, and it's still matched because the word network is mixed in there somewhere. It's still in that order, NETWORK, even though it's mixed in with all this other stuff. All right, so there's how to use grep in like its most simplistic form. If you find yourself using grep all the time, and you want to make it, you want to even be more powerful with it, well, really that word network is really just an instance of this pattern or this regular expression. That's what the RE stands for in grep, regular expression. And this is like some computer science theory thing that you can build up these regular expressions to describe all sorts of patterns. I could make it so I can look for network in the file, but only if it's like the beginning of a line, or only if it's at the end of a line, or only if it has a space on each side of it, or something like that. And I can specify very complicated, very precise patterns so that I could get matches exactly what I want. I don't just get all these random matches that I have to sort through. I can match exactly what I want with this. And if you find yourself using grep all the time, take a couple days and learn about all these regular expressions and patterns that you can specify, and it'll just make grep that much more powerful and that much more useful to you. Now, another command that I want to show you is the tail command, and this is a really easy command. Basically, all tail does is prints out the end of files. So if I say something like, let me clear the screen first before I do this. If I say something like tail messages, okay, you'll see the last 10 lines of the messages file. And the reason that the tail command exists is just because when you're looking at log files, right, it's like the stuff that's at the end of the log file is the most recent stuff, and that's probably what you want to be looking at. You don't want to be looking at stuff that's happened way in the past. You want to look at the most recent stuff. And you can make tail print out more than the last 10 lines. If you want the last 20 lines, you can say tail minus N20. And then you can get 20 lines of output, the last 20 lines of some particular file. All right, and that's just a useful way of finding out what's going on recently in your log files. Let me show you one more thing that you can do with the tail command, and that's